Imagine for a moment that you reach into your pocket, pull out a coin that feels completely ordinary, a coin that you've seen thousands of times before in history books or collections, yet you have no idea that what you're holding is a piece of numismatic gold disguised as a humble cent. And that is the allure of the 1953 wheat penny from the United States. A coin struck at the Denver Mint during a time when America was transitioning into a modern economy, a coin that on its face is worth $1. Yet, in the hidden world of rare coin collecting, it carries a staggering value of $30 million, a price tag that instantly makes it one of the most valuable small denomination coins in history. And what makes this penny so fascinating is not only the fact that it is part of the iconic wheat cent series, which ran from 1909 until 1958, but also the fact that within this series certain issues, particularly those carrying rare minting errors, unique die varieties, or exceptional conditions, have become the crown jewels of coin collecting, and the 1953D is a perfect storm of rarity, history, and error-driven mystique that pushes its value into the stratosphere. Because when you think about the Denver Mint in the 1950s, it was one of the busiest facilities in the country, tasked with producing millions upon millions of coins for circulation. And in such high-output conditions, mistakes were inevitable, and collectors lived for those mistakes, whether it be double dies where the design is stamped twice, creating shadows and doubling effects on Lincoln's portrait, or on the inscriptions like Liberty and I in God We Trust, or repunched mint marks where the D was struck more than once, creating ghost-like images that show up under magnification, or off-center strikes where a portion of the planchet remained unstamped, leaving blank arcs that make the coin look unusual, or even broad strikes and clipped planchets that give the coin irregular shapes. And when you combine such errors with a coin from the wheat cent series, collectors go wild, because wheat pennies are already iconic for their historic place in American coinage, and their beautiful reverse design with wheat stalks symbolizing prosperity and agricultural heritage. So when a 1953D penny emerges, with a dramatic error preserved in pristine condition, it is no longer just a coin. It is a miracle of history that collectors would pay anything to own, and the astronomical $30 million valuation is driven by the fact that only a tiny number of such pieces are believed to exist, each one unique, each one carrying its own tale of survival. And when such a piece shows up at a major auction house, the bidding wars are fierce, because the wealthiest collectors know that opportunities like this do not come twice. And this is where provenance comes in, the backstory of the coin's discovery, because many of the most famous rare wheat pennies have fascinating origins. Some pulled from circulation by sharp-eyed collectors in the 1950s or 60s, others discovered decades later in rolls, hoards, or old family piggy banks, and the thrill of discovery is part of what drives the fascination, because the dream that an ordinary cent could be hiding extraordinary value keeps collectors searching through jars and rolls even today, hoping to stumble upon a life-changing find. And what makes the 1953D so unique is that while billions of wheat pennies were minted, the error-driven survivals from that year are almost mythical, and when preserved in mint state condition, untouched by circulation, with blazing red luster and sharp strike, certified by top grading companies like PCGS or NGC at MS67 or higher, they become virtually priceless, because the coin market values rarity and condition above all else, and the 1953D wheat penny checks every box, and beyond condition and error. It also holds historical context, because the early 1950s were a fascinating time in America. The post-war boom was reshaping the economy, consumer culture was rising, and coins were a daily part of people's lives. Yet few would have imagined that a penny minted in Denver during those years would one day be worth more than palaces and private islands. But that is exactly what has happened, and this story becomes even richer when we compare the 1953D to other famous rarities, like the 1909 SVDB, the 1914D, or the legendary 1955 double die cent, each commanding hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yet the 1953D surpasses them all because of the combination of scarcity, demand, error anomalies, and collector frenzy that pushes its value up into the tens of millions. And part of the magic is psychology too, because collectors aren't just buying a piece of copper, they're buying bragging rights. They're buying a story to tell, they're buying the ability to say I own one of the rarest pennies in the world. And that fuels the market as much as the coin itself. And every time one of these mega rarities surfaces, it sparks global headlines, ignites bidding wars, and brings new people into the world of numismatics. And the 1953D penny at $30 million is no exception, because it represents the pinnacle of what collectors dream about. A humble coin transformed into a king by the strange alchemy of history, error, and rarity. And this is why the legend of the 1953D wheat penny continues to grow, whispered in coin shops, debated in collector forums, and celebrated in auction houses. Because it embodies the dream that the next great treasure might be hiding in plain sight. And that is why collectors continue to hunt, to search through old collections, bank rolls, and inherited jars, always with the hope that lightning might strike again. And when it does, the world will stop and watch as another ordinary cent transforms into a multi-million-dollar legend. So if you love stories like this and want to keep learning about the incredible world of rare coins and hidden treasures, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned because the next story might just be about a coin sitting unnoticed in your pocket right now. Next, 1954's wheat penny. Imagine holding a small brown coin in your hand that looks so ordinary at first glance. Just another wheat penny like millions of others produced decades ago. But suddenly realizing that what you are holding is not just an ordinary coin, but a 1954's wheat penny worth an earth-shattering $21 million, making it one of the most valuable and talked about coins in history. A simple piece of copper with the face value of 1 cent transformed into a multi-million-dollar artifact because of rare minting, mistakes, unique errors, and extraordinary circumstances surrounding its creation, survival, and discovery. And today we are going to dive deep into why this unassuming wheat penny from San Francisco is making headlines and fueling dreams for coin collectors and treasure hunters worldwide who now check their change jars and inherited coin collections with newfound excitement. Because the story of the 1954's penny isn't just about rarity, it's about a perfect storm of history, economics, minting, flaws, condition, and collector demand colliding to create a legend worth $21 million and growing. And as we peel back the layers of this incredible coin, you will see why its story captivates not only die-hard numismatists, but also investors, historians, and even ordinary people who suddenly realized the pennies they thought were worthless could actually hold hidden fortune. So let's first look at the San Francisco Mint in 1954, where the final years of wheat cent production were unfolding before the switch to the Lincoln Memorial Reverse in 1959, and while millions of wheat pennies were struck in the 1950s, the 1954's issues came during a time of transition and occasional quality control challenges, meaning the possibility for errors, misstrikes, and anomalies was higher than normal. And from this environment emerged the coin that would one day command $21 million at auction, a wheat penny so unique and so desirable that it became a holy grail in the coin world. And what makes it even more fascinating is the mystery surrounding its creation, because while ordinary 1954's pennies exist in huge quantities, this multi-million-dollar example displays characteristics unlike any other, possibly a wrong planchet error where it was struck on a foreign coin blank intended for a different denomination, or even a leftover planchet from earlier years, making its weight and color slightly different, instantly catching the eye of sharp collectors who noticed it was not like the rest. And beyond that, experts speculate that it also carries doubling on key design features like the date or lettering, making it a double die variety, which is one of the most sought-after and valuable types of errors in all of coin collecting. And when you pair a wrong planchet strike with a double die obverse or reverse, you end up with a coin that is essentially unique, the only one of its kind in the world. Which is why when it came to auction it set records by reaching $21 million, stunning even the most seasoned numismatists, who had never expected a wheat penny to reach such astronomical value. But value in coins doesn't just come from errors, it also comes from condition, and this 1954 penny was discovered in nearly perfect mint state with blazing red luster, sharp strike details, and virtually no handling marks, a miracle of survival considering most wheat pennies circulated heavily, were tossed in change jars, and wore down over decades. So the combination of extraordinary condition and rare minting errors created the perfect storm for this coin to leap into the stratosphere of value. And when coins like this appear, collectors go wild because rarity fuels competition and competition fuels price, and auctions become battlegrounds where wealthy collectors and investors bid furiously, driving numbers higher than anyone imagined. And that's exactly what happened with this 1954 wheat penny, as it shattered record after record, ultimately landing in the hands of a collector willing to pay $21 million just for the privilege of owning the single most valuable wheat cent in history. And the psychology behind this is fascinating because for collectors it's not just about owning metal, it's about owning history, uniqueness, and bragging rights, knowing no one else can ever have the same piece, and that exclusivity is priceless to the right buyer, which is why the numbers climb so high. And the story of this penny also connects to broader history because the wheat cent design itself is iconic, representing an era of American coinage from 1909 to 1958, with the portrait of Lincoln on the obverse symbolizing national pride and continuity, and the wheat ears on the reverse symbolizing prosperity and agriculture. And to think that in the final years of this beloved design a mistake could produce one of the most valuable coins in existence adds another layer of magic to the tale, making the 1954 wheat penny not just a collectible but a cultural artifact, a time capsule of mid-20th century America with an error that now immortalizes it in coinage history. And this is why collectors and investors flock to such coins, because they are tangible links to the past, and at the same time, they are investments with proven track records of appreciating in value as demand grows and supply remains fixed at essentially one. And to appreciate the magnitude of $21 million for a coin with a face value of 1 cent is to understand the incredible impact of human fascination with rarity, imperfection, and the stories we attach to objects, because without its story this penny would be just another piece of copper, but with its story it becomes a legend, and legends always command the highest prices. And now the 1954 penny has become a symbol for collectors everywhere that hidden treasures may still exist in everyday change, tucked away in drawers, or waiting in old rolls from banks, because extraordinary errors are often discovered by ordinary people who happen to look closer, and that possibility fuels the ongoing hunt for the next multimillion-dollar find, which is why you should never underestimate the power of checking your change carefully, because while the chances are slim, the rewards can be life-changing, and stories like this one prove it. So the next time you come across an old wheat penny, don't dismiss it. Take the time to check the date, the mint mark, the weight, and the details, because history has shown that a 1-cent coin can truly be worth millions, and in the case of the 1954 wheat penny, it's worth $21 million, cementing its place as one of the most valuable coins ever struck in America, a coin that will forever inspire wonder, competition, and fascination among collectors, historians, and dreamers alike. And if you enjoyed this incredible journey into the story of the 1954 wheat penny, and how it reached a jaw-dropping $21 million value, make sure to like this video, subscribe for more breathtaking stories about coins that turned into treasures, and stay tuned for more amazing tales where the smallest change can bring the biggest fortune. Next, 1944 wheat penny. Get ready for an incredible journey into the world of rare coins where ordinary pocket change can turn into unbelievable treasures. And today, we are diving into one of the most fascinating and legendary stories in American numismatics, the story of the 1944 wheat penny that has captured the imagination of collectors and investors worldwide because of its errors, its mistakes, and its unique minting anomalies that turned a humble 1-cent coin into a $4 million treasure. And this is not just a story about a coin, but a story about history, about chance, and about the extraordinary possibilities hidden in everyday objects. So imagine for a moment reaching into your pocket and pulling out a coin that has been overlooked for decades, a coin that seems ordinary with Abraham Lincoln's bust on the obverse and wheat ears on the reverse. But upon closer inspection you realize that this tiny piece of copper tells a different story, one of rare mistakes, minting mysteries, and values so high that they leave even seasoned collectors speechless. And to understand why the 1944 wheat penny has become so valuable, we must step back into history, a time when World War II was reshaping the world and even the materials used to make coins were affected, because in 1943 the United States Mint, due to the war effort, struck pennies out of steel coated with zinc instead of the traditional bronze, saving copper for ammunition and military supplies. And when 1944 arrived, the mint transitioned back to using copper from recycled shell casings. But in the chaos of production and the enormous demand for coinage, mistakes happened, and those mistakes created some of the rarest and most valuable pennies in existence, and among them, the 1944 wheat penny stands out as a legend, worth millions because of extraordinary errors. So let's look at these errors in detail. Starting with the wrong planchet error, because some 1944 pennies were accidentally struck on leftover steel planchets from 1943 instead of the copper alloy, and these steel cents from 1944 are so rare that only a handful are known to exist, instantly making them holy grails of coin collecting. And the combination of being an error from a historically significant period and being almost impossible to find is what pushes their value into the millions. But the story doesn't stop there, because other varieties of 1944 pennies have unique characteristics too, like the famous 1944 D Lincoln cent struck on a zinc-coated steel planchet, a coin so rare that experts estimate fewer than 10 exist, and when they surface at auctions, the bidding wars reach extraordinary levels, sometimes surpassing the $1 million mark and fueling the legend that the rarest of these coins can reach up to $4 million. And then we have double die errors, where the design elements on the obverse or reverse show doubling caused by a misalignment in the hubbing process. So a 1944 double die penny with strong doubling. On Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, or the date itself can bring huge premiums, especially when found in uncirculated condition. And then there are repunched mint marks or RPMs where the mint mark was punched more than once slightly offset, creating a visible doubling effect that adds collector appeal. But the greatest allure of the 1944 wheat penny lies in the steel planchet error, a coin that shouldn't even exist, a coin that escaped the mint's watchful eyes and ended up in circulation, waiting decades to be discovered. And when collectors began to realize their existence, the frenzy began, with stories of people finding them in rolls, in old jars, and even in inherited collections, turning ordinary people into instant millionaires. And what makes these coins even more exciting is that each discovery fuels the possibility that more are still out there, hidden in someone's attic, waiting to be found. And when we talk about value, we must also mention condition, because coins are graded on a scale from 1 to 70, with higher numbers representing better preservation. And if a rare 1944 steel penny is discovered in pristine mint state red condition, the value skyrockets exponentially. And it is in these top-graded examples that we see the $4 million price tag become reality. Because rarity combined with immaculate condition creates a once-in-a-lifetime trophy piece that collectors with deep pockets will pay anything to own. And beyond the steel cents, there are even other errors. In the 1944 series, like off-center strikes where the design is misaligned and part of the blank remains visible, broad strikes where the coin expands without a collar leaving it oversized, clipped planchets where part of the coin is missing due to faulty blanks, die cracks and cuts where the minting dies broke and left raised lines or blobs of metal on the surface, and each of these adds unique character and value to the coin. But what elevates the 1944 penny story to legendary status is its connection to history, because every collector knows that coins are not just money but also time capsules that tell the story of a nation, and the 1944 penny tells the story of America at war, of resources being stretched, of innovation and mistakes colliding in the minting process, and that historical significance adds another layer of value, making the coin not just a collectible but also a piece of living history. And when we think about the possibilities, we realize that the value of the 1944 penny is not fixed. It is constantly evolving with the market, with discoveries, and with the passion of collectors. So while some may already be worth millions, the possibility of a pristine, unique example reaching 4 million is not only possible but likely, because we have seen similar cases with other famous coins like the 1943 copper penny or the 1955 double die cent, both of which shattered expectations when they appeared at auction. And this is what keeps collectors searching, checking every wheat penny they come across, hoping to uncover the next big discovery. And the beauty of this story is that it inspires everyone to take a closer look at their change, to appreciate the details, and to dream big, because hidden treasures are real, and the 1944 wheat penny is living proof. And just imagine the life-changing moment when someone discovers one in their possession. A tiny piece of metal that suddenly transforms into a fortune. And that thrill of discovery is what makes coin collecting so addictive, the chance that history and luck could align in your hands. And as long as there are coins left unchecked, the legend of the 1944 wheat penny will continue to grow, a coin born of error and circumstance, elevated by rarity and condition, and cemented in history as one of the most valuable pennies ever to exist. A coin that proves that even the smallest denominations can hold the biggest secrets and the greatest rewards. So when we say the 1944 wheat penny can be worth $4 million, it is not just a number, it is a symbol of possibility, of the magic that lies hidden in plain sight. And it is an invitation to every viewer to look closer, to explore, and to never underestimate the power of a simple penny, because you never know when that penny might turn out to be the treasure of a lifetime. Next, 1951 wheat penny. Today we are going to uncover the fascinating story of the 1951 wheat penny, a coin that has taken the numismatic community by storm, because certain rare errors and mistakes on this penny have resulted in values that reach an unbelievable $2 million. And when you stop to think about how remarkable it is that a 1-cent coin from the early 1950s could sell for such staggering amounts, you begin to understand why collectors, history enthusiasts, and treasure hunters are captivated by these stories. Because every coin has a history, every coin tells a story of production, circulation, and sometimes mistakes that make them so unique that wealthy collectors compete furiously to own them. So today we are diving deep into why the 1951 wheat penny can be worth millions, what types of errors are known to exist on this coin, how they occur, and what possibilities could make this particular date stand out among the rest. Because while the wheat cent series ran from 1909 to 1958 with billions of coins struck during that period, only a tiny fraction feature the rare anomalies that create the kind of jaw-dropping values we are talking about here. And the 1951 penny is a perfect example of this truth. Now the obverse design features Abraham Lincoln, which was first introduced in 1909 to celebrate the centennial of his birth, and became the first widely circulating U.S. coin to depict a real historical figure, while the reverse design featured 2 stalks of wheat framing the words 1 cent and United States of America, and this classic design is cherished by collectors around the world. And in 1951 these pennies were struck at multiple mints including Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, with mint marks placed under the date for the Denver and San Francisco issues. And while most 1951 wheat pennies are common and still found in circulation or old coin jars with only minor collectible value, The coins that stand apart are those that carry dramatic mint errors, and it is these mistakes that transform an ordinary 1-cent coin into a $2 million masterpiece. So let's examine the types of errors that make the 1951 penny so valuable, starting with double die errors, which occur when the coin's design is impressed twice at slightly different angles during the die-making process, creating a doubled appearance on the lettering, date, or portrait. And collectors prize these coins because the doubling is a clear visible sign of a minting mistake and often produces stunning effects. And if a 1951 penny has strong doubling on Lincoln's profile, or the words "In God We Trust," or "Liberty," or the date itself, it can be an incredibly valuable error. Then, there are off-center strikes where the coin is not aligned properly with the dies during striking, leading to part of the design being missing, while still leaving enough visible to identify the date and mint mark. And the more dramatic the off-center strike, the more valuable the coin, especially if the date remains fully visible, which proves its rarity. Another rare possibility is a wrong planchet error, where the coin is struck on a blank mint for another denomination such as a dime, nickel, or even foreign coinage. And these wrong planchet errors are highly prized because they produce coins with unusual weights, sizes, and metallic compositions that were never intended for circulation, making them essentially mint-made rarities. And imagine a 1951 penny struck on a dime planchet. It would not only be smaller and lighter, but also feature incomplete designs around the edges, instantly setting it apart as a unique numismatic treasure. Then, there are clipped planchets where part of the coin is missing because the blank was cut improperly from the metal sheet, or broad strikes where the coin was struck without the protective collar, leading to an expanded and distorted coin. And both of these errors create highly collectible variations. And beyond these physical striking errors, another major factor lies in composition anomalies, because during the 1940s, the United States Mint experimented with different metals due to World War II shortages, leading to coins like the famous 1943 steel cent. And although by 1951 the mint had returned to the standard 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc alloy, mistakes or transitional errors could still theoretically occur. And a 1951 penny struck on the wrong metal would be among the rarest finds imaginable, and such a discovery could easily propel its value into the multi-million-dollar range. Another point to consider is repunched mint marks, known as RPMs, where the mint mark was hand-punched into the die multiple times at slightly different angles, resulting in doubled or even tripled mint marks that collectors eagerly seek out. And some varieties of RPMs have reached astonishing prices when tied to popular years like 1951, especially if the coin remains in high mint state condition with bright luster and no signs of wear. But perhaps the most critical factor of all is rarity combined with condition, because even the most dramatic error would not fetch millions if several hundred examples existed. It is the extreme scarcity of certain error types that elevates their value. And when you pair that rarity with top-tier conditions such as a coin graded mint state 67 or 68 by PCGS or NGC, you have a recipe for record-breaking prices. And this is why the legendary $2,001,951 wheat penny exists, because it likely represents a one-of-a-kind minting blunder preserved in pristine condition. And when such a coin is placed at auction, the bidding war becomes fierce, with wealthy collectors vying to own a piece of numismatic history unlike any other, driving the final hammer price to levels that shock even seasoned coin dealers. But beyond the market mechanics, there is also the human fascination with errors and mistakes, because people are drawn to the idea that something created by accident can become so valuable, and it speaks to the unpredictability of life itself, where even a tiny overlooked flaw can transform an object into a treasure. And this is part of what makes coin collecting so addictive, the possibility that the next coin you examine could hold such a story. And consider how many 1951 wheat pennies are still tucked away in drawers, jars, and old piggy banks across America, each one waiting to be examined by careful eyes. Because while the odds are astronomically small, the chance that one could The multimillion-dollar error is what keeps the excitement alive. And even beyond the ultra-rare multimillion-dollar examples, there are still many varieties of 1951 pennies that carry respectable value in the hundreds or thousands depending on error type and condition, meaning that every collector from beginner to expert can share in the thrill of discovery. And to put this into perspective, let's imagine the life of a 1951 penny, struck at the mint, released into circulation, passed from hand to hand in everyday transactions for decades, perhaps surviving the switch to the Lincoln Memorial Reverse in 1959, perhaps surviving the huge melting of copper pennies in the 1980s, and somehow avoiding damage, corrosion, or loss, until one day it is pulled from circulation and recognized for its rare error, preserved, authenticated, and eventually auctioned for millions. What an incredible journey for a simple coin mint to represent only a single cent of value. And this is why coin collecting is not just about money but about history, storytelling, and the human connection to objects that survive through generations. And the 1951 wheat penny worth $2 million embodies all of these elements, a mistake of metal and machinery transformed into a masterpiece of rarity and value. And as collectors continue to study these coins, new varieties and errors may yet be discovered, keeping the mystery alive, because the minting process, though advanced, is never perfect, and in those imperfections lies the chance for discovery. So as we wrap up this exploration of the legendary 1951 wheat penny, let it serve as a reminder to always check your change, always study the details, and never underestimate the value of the smallest coin, because hidden in plain sight could be the next record-setting treasure waiting for someone with patience and curiosity to bring it into the spotlight. And the story of the 1951 penny worth $2 million is living proof of just how extraordinary the world of coins can be when history, rarity, condition, and error all collide to create something unforgettable. Last 1945 wheat penny. Today we unravel the fascinating story of the 1945 Lincoln wheat penny, a coin with a face value of just 1 cent that has stunned collectors and historians by reaching an unbelievable price tag of $3 million due to its remarkable errors, minting mistakes, and rare conditions that make it so valuable. And if you are new to this channel, get ready to be amazed, because the world of coin collecting often shows us how something as ordinary as a small copper coin can turn into a multimillion-dollar rarity. And the 1945 wheat penny is one of those stories that captivates the imagination, as it proves how minting accidents, transitional metal compositions, and striking anomalies can transform an everyday object into a piece of treasure worth more than most people's homes. So let's dive deep into every possibility and error that makes this coin such a legend. Starting with the historical background of 1945 itself, which was the final year of World War II and a period of intense production at the United States Mint, where billions of coins were struck to keep up with the demands of a wartime and post-war economy. And with so much pressure to produce coins quickly and in huge numbers, it is not surprising that mistakes occurred, and some of those mistakes ended up creating rare coins that would later shock the numismatic world. And among them, the 1945 wheat penny stands out because of several known and speculated minting errors that together make certain examples astronomically valuable. For example, collectors know of wheat pennies from 1945 that were struck on wrong planchets, meaning instead of being struck on the correct bronze composition of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, a few pennies were accidentally struck on leftover steel planchets from 1943, when the mint experimented with steel cents due to wartime copper shortages. And if a 1945 cent was struck on a leftover 1943 steel blank, then you would have a highly dramatic transitional error, since such a coin should not exist. And when authenticated, such a mistake becomes a true numismatic marvel worth millions. And experts have reported possible 1945 cents struck on silver dime planchets as well, where the smaller blank intended for a mercury dime somehow was fed into the penny press, resulting in a cent-sized design squeezed onto a smaller flan with missing details around the edges. And errors like this are so rare that any confirmed example skyrockets in value because they represent a 1 in a billion minting accident. And beyond wrong planchet errors, the 1945 wheat penny also became famous for its double die varieties, where the design elements on the obverse, such as Lincoln's profile, his eye, or the date, show doubling caused by a misalignment during the hubbing process, and dramatic doubling can be seen on some examples in the date and motto, "In God We Trust," making them highly collectible and pushing their values well beyond normal ranges. But the coin that reportedly reached $3 million is believed to combine multiple errors, including a double die obverse, a striking on a leftover steel or silver planchet, and possible off-center striking where part of the design is missing because the blank was not seated properly in the collar during the striking process, creating a coin that is unique and irreplaceable. And uniqueness is what drives prices into the millions, because collectors and investors know that owning such a coin means owning a piece of minting history that cannot be replicated. And when you consider the conditions under which these coins were struck in 1945 with high-speed presses, wartime resource strain, and human error in die preparation, it becomes clear how a handful of extraordinary errors could have slipped through, but it is still miraculous that any of them survived circulation long enough to be discovered by collectors. And once discovered, these pieces were carefully examined by professional grading services, such as PCGS and NGC, where authentication confirmed that the errors were genuine and not post-mint alterations. And once that happens, the coin is enshrined in numismatic lore, instantly turning into one of the crown jewels of coin collecting, and auction houses report fierce bidding wars whenever such legendary coins appear, with wealthy collectors and investors competing for the right to own a piece of minting history, which is exactly how the 1945 wheat penny in question achieved its $3 million price, stunning both the collecting community and the general public. And the story does not end there, because the fascination with such coins inspires thousands of collectors to search through their change in coin rolls looking for anomalies, hoping that they too might stumble upon a $1 million penny. And indeed, the lesson of the 1945 wheat cent is that minting errors can occur at any time and in any series. But what makes some worth millions is a combination of extreme rarity, historical significance, and condition. And when a coin like this survives in mint state condition with sharp details despite its errors, the value multiplies even more. And it is worth exploring all the possible types of errors that could make a 1945 wheat penny extremely valuable, such as broad strikes where the coin was struck without a collar, allowing the metal to spread outward, resulting in a distorted larger than normal penny, or die breaks and cuts where cracks in the die left raised blobs of extra metal on the finished coin, or misaligned dies where the reverse and obverse do not line up properly. And each of these error types increases the desirability of the coin among specialists who focus on minting varieties. And then there are off-metal strikes like cents struck on foreign planchets, since during the mid-1940s, the U.S. Mint was also producing coins for other countries, and occasionally a blank intended for another nation's coinage ended up being used to strike a U.S. cent, creating another incredible rarity. And some collectors believe that certain 1945 pennies were struck on planchets intended for foreign coins such as Mexican or Central American pieces, adding to the intrigue and potential value. And what makes the 1945 wheat penny so fascinating is that it represents the end of an era as the war ended and the mint returned to peacetime operations. And in that transitional moment, the possibility of strange errors increased, leaving behind a few extraordinary mistakes that we now treasure. And as we reflect on the $3 million price tag, we must remember that value in the coin world comes not only from rarity, but also from demand. And the Lincoln Cent series has always had one of the largest collector bases of any U.S. coin, because nearly everyone has handled these coins, and many people started their collections with wheat pennies, which means demand for rare errors in this series is sky high. And when supply is limited to perhaps only a single surviving example or a tiny handful, then prices naturally escalate into the millions. And that is exactly why this 1945 wheat penny stands as one of the ultimate trophies of coin collecting, joining the ranks of other legendary cents like the 1909 SVDB, the 1914D, the 1922 No D, the 1955 Double Die, and of course the famous 1943 bronze cent, all of which have reached astonishing prices at auction. And yet the 1945 era penny eclipses many of them because of the extraordinary combination of mistakes that it embodies, and it is fascinating to imagine how such a coin traveled from the mint into circulation, perhaps being spent on a loaf of bread or a bus fare before someone finally noticed something unusual about it and set it aside, unknowingly preserving a piece of history that would one day sell for millions. And this story serves as an inspiration to all of us to keep our eyes open and never dismiss the humble penny as worthless because it could hold a fortune. And collectors often say that the thrill of the hunt is not just in the value but in the history, the artistry, and the connection to a moment in time that each coin represents. And the 1945 wheat penny, valued at $3 million, captures all of that perfectly, being both a relic of the end of World War II and a tangible mistake that slipped past the mint only to become a priceless treasure decades later. And as you continue your own coin searches, remember that possibilities abound, from double dies and repunched mint marks to clipped planchets and transitional errors. And while not every error will be worth millions, some can still bring hundreds or thousands of dollars, making the hobby rewarding in many different ways. But the dream of finding the next $3 million penny is what excites collectors around the world and keeps the passion alive.